WordPress versus Webflow. Website development wars. It's going to be a good versus because these are two platforms, two different CMS tools, content management system tools that work within content delivery networks independently, right? And that's CDN. So when you look at WordPress and Webflow, your big question is, how do I set it up? How do I design it? After it's designed, how do I maintain it? And how can I also create more content or create more links or create more sustainability that will build my business, that will build my links, that will build my portfolio online in a way that is very accurate and very effective. So this is going to be the room for that discussion today. And I'm super excited that you're going to learn something new about how you can use SEO and discover where your business would take you based on how you want to create content for yourself, for your business, for your profile, for your business. These are going to be very specific things that we're going to look at today. So this is going to be a topic that if you've ever come across, I know there's always a lot of questions that are asked, right? It's a versus between this and that. So today is going to be WordPress versus Webflow, knowing that it's website development SEO based, right? There's going to be a toggle, a friction, a war between two different parties, right? Two different things. But at the end of the day, the goal is to figure out what is the best result and how can we get the best medium? Can we sign a peace treaty? Can we do something that's going to make it equally beneficial and mutually beneficial for both you, the consumer, listening, watching, reading, scrolling, typing, clicking, and also the producer who is going to be managing, maintaining, implementing, coding, and all the good stuff. So it's going to be a big connection between these two. And welcome Diamond and Roseanne and Queen, Jamaican sister, thank you for being here. And also Prakash. And also I see you too, Mohammed, thank you for being here. Ryan, thanks for being here too. We just kicked off the room. And happy Tuesday. For those who love tacos, happy Taco Tuesday. And we are here today to really dive deep into these two platforms. I know yesterday when I was talking about is SEO dead in 2026, I was mentioning that on the We Don't Play podcast show. And between SEO services and SEO agencies, what's the better option between the two? Are you looking for an agency or are you looking for a service? How important is the agency? How important is the service? How important is the problem? How much of a priority is the problem to you? So it's going to be a big deal for us to discover this today. We're going to talk about it as well. And then Ryan says, big Google update last week killed my organic traffic. Let's talk about it, Ryan. I heard about that too. So we'd love to know your thoughts because in big websites, I think it was HubSpot the other day, there's some huge websites that had that same hit, when it comes to spikes and dips when you look at all the keywords and content buildings and content, whether it's, EEAT verified or not. But we'd love to look at, this discussion today and talk about these two websites and also based on where it's also set up too, with also, thinking about DNS records and index pages. There's a lot to cover. So I'd love to know what happened, Ryan. Good morning and thanks for being here today.
Morning. It was just a shake up on the SERPs page. I went from being number one for a ton of keywords all the way down to, number 6 to 10 on a lot of stuff. And people in general aren't scrolling that far down. My impressions, I was getting about 15,000 impressions a day and I'm down to just shy of 5,000. So, absolutely decimated my traffic. Revenue, again, I lost damn near half the revenue. I haven't actively been building links and stuff for several months. I've kind of just been coasting, and this kind of got me, off of my haunches. I need to start doing press releases. I need to start, actively networking, trying to find partnerships and guest posting and all that other stuff. But yeah, no, it was eye-opening. Where it's like I've just been coasting, like I said, because I had such a wide gap. And what's actually surprising, the thing that's most surprising to me about this shakeup is I think Google's kind of they're just throwing shit at the wall to see what would stick, because the stuff, like even brand search terms, my brand name is, without getting the specifics just because of the general nature of the site, it is something that it's a generic TLD, or so not generic TLD, it's an EMD, it's an exact match domain, and it's 2 words, and the brand name is the keyword, right, that I'm trying to rank for. And even on that, which was like in my mind a guaranteed number 1 ranking, there's actually 2 other sites. One site is a Favour page offering that service from a bunch of subcontractors that's now ranking number 2, which I thought was interesting. And another one was some no-name, some small website that's now been pushed to number 3. The number 1 spot kind of makes sense. It's a competitor, I can see just by looking at their backlink profile that they've really been putting in the work, trying to close that gap. And it just kind of goes to show that, I think Google is now probably looking more for progress and continuous updates and constantly adding new links and stuff like that, because the gap as far as like the authority score, if you were to look at SEMrush or, Majestic or Ahrefs or any of these platforms, like my site still has more authority than these other sites. Well, not Fiverr, obviously, but this other sites that are ranking now above me, they just have more recent links. So anyways, I'll stop talking now.
There's a lot to unpack there, Ryan, and thank you for giving us this detail, because I know what you're talking about, sites specifically, because I know we've talked about this before, and just knowing what that is doing for the content and also context of search signals and also last modification updates is really important. And when I think about pages now, it's no longer just, backlinks, which is great, but how strong are those links? Because you could also lose backlinks. You could be losing backlinks every day, just like the stocks could be going down, going up, price could be going down, going up. The same way you could be losing backlinks and gaining backlinks. So it's never going to have a status quo or a stagnant, consistent, way of I would say like consistently doing it all the time. It's going to change because, like you said, you're building links, which is good. But now if those links are not certified, or if those links are not backed up by maybe the algorithm server, it might also affect you indirectly, because that's where it's dependent on. So it becomes very dicey. So when I look at it from a long-term perspective, and I'm looking at it from, like you said, revenue from building those things, having different sites, majorly, I don't know if email marketing is even something that you're considering or looking into. But when you start looking at ESPs and start looking at CDNs, looking at SEO in itself, and those people who you mentioned that are higher than you have more recent posts, is because those recent posts are also being connected back to API systems that look for the most recent topics based on the most recent brands. Now it's more so decentralized than before that was centralized, because before you would have the top 10%, top 1%, top 0.1%, ranking for everything under the sun, which is great. But now it's like, okay, how do we get the person that is looking for information that is specific to their need, the result that they're looking for? So if the people above you are creating content that they're getting responses more of than you are, then 2 ways you can go about it are either you update what you had before, or you create new content that's going to one up their perspective. But I mean, it's easier said than done. But when I look at it, I would have to be more technically connected to see where everything dipped from and where we can pick up from to take those next steps. But yes, the update has definitely changed a lot of things for people. And that's why I always say, yeah, it's great to rank on Google. It's great to rank on all these search engines. But the value exchange is, I'd rather have low impressions and more clicks than less clicks and more impressions. because if I have more clicks, then even if I'm reaching a smaller audience, I have a higher average return and a higher yield on my time, energy, and money, because I know I'm investing 2 hours that I can make back that by time, because I was able to spend X amount of hours in a day. So when I look at it from that perspective, there's a lot to unpack. But yes, those updates are going to keep on coming. But the best way to do it is to just build a hedge around your content, your proprietary information, by building communication systems that doesn't rely basically on links and just aggregated traffic, but it's more so a natural way of finding you in a more consolidated manner, if that makes sense.
Yep. No, it's you asked briefly at the beginning of that about the email marketing, and that's another thing. It's really just like my own laziness. I've been making so much money on this that I haven't felt the need to take this to the next level. As an example, I've got about 160,000 emails, all opt-in, and I do not send many emails to these people. I don't think I've sent actually a marketing email campaign in probably 8 months. There's system emails that go out automatically, programmatically, related to like their account and like the platform itself and like updates on the platform. But as far as like, doing a promotion, like, it's Valentine's Day is coming up. I haven't done anything like that since, I don't even know what it was, like Mother's Day or something a long time ago.
Wow. Ryan, you got me thinking about a lot of things now.
Yeah, and I also have,
Okay.
because I've warmed up these emails through all the transactional emails that are going through Amazon SES. I have Sendy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sendy as a self-hosted email marketing platform.
Yeah.
So I've got Sendy set up, and I have, and I just saying some updates that we've done and more of an actual marketing email. And the reason it didn't go out is that I had crossed the 100,000 email in 24-hour barrier, and Amazon SES was like, hey, that's too. They were rate limiting me, so they wouldn't let me send all the emails out at once. So I actually applied for more. I said, hey, I need to increase. I've got more subscribers now, and I need to increase this number. And they accepted it, but with all the holidays and everything going on, like I basically took 3 weeks off and didn't actually ever send the email. So I've got, I'm just a fool, a lazy fool.
Let me ask you this, Ryan. Are you this is going to be a good question for us in the room, because I'm looking at websites, installments, integrations, investments, like the whole nine. Are you saying, or maybe it could be that you're comfortable, yes, but are you also afraid of success or afraid of getting uncomfortable again? Or in a way where it's like, okay, let's just see what happens. Are you in a limbo? Like, how do you see that, especially in a new year now? What are you looking out for, especially knowing that these changes can happen, knowing that you still have to protect your assets? How are you seeing this long-term or even midterm for you?
So I've actually got adult ADHD, and I am a web developer and who loves shiny projects. I chase projects around, and after this started making me a bunch of money, I was on to the next thing. And I still have, we've talked before, and I have a handful of ventures, all 100% online, like no overhead, no, even real management. They're kind of self-managed in that I have systems I put in place, and I set up an MCP server and have an AI agent that'll issue refunds if necessary, handle generic customer service tickets and stuff like that. So basically, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, the short version is that I've been coasting because I'm already successful, if that makes sense. And I've been like, it's like my success has actually been my burden, if that makes sense. Like I've got all the things that I could possibly want. I spent my winter doing is, instead of getting that email out, I was building a golf simulator. I built a dedicated room in my office. I've got a detached office. It's probably 1,400 square feet, and I had a garage in there that was unused. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to put all this stuff in my other garage and turn this into a golf simulator so I can golf over the winter. And basically, this is all just me saying that my privilege got the best of me.
First of all, congratulations on your success. That's a major, major move. That's something to definitely pat yourself on the back for and be proud of, because success is measured by your efforts and measured by your plans and your goals. And people have set goals for this year. And for me, I don't even set goals anymore. I set intentions, because goals can be moved. Goalposts can be moved. You know, you can move something, right? You can simulate it, like you said, Ryan. And you simulating is just amazing because you're spending time doing what you love, as opposed to trying to get to a point where you're like, okay, should I do more? So I think for you, it's more so, okay, it's happening, it happened. What do we do next? Pivot, or make the next step, because you're an action taker. So that's not the problem. It's just, okay, the time is probably going to have an impact on how you're going to now deliver if you want to now do something like that. But now it also gets me wondering too, if that's something on the email side you love to do, want to do, or could do if somebody else was doing it.
It's one of these things that I think, I'm a solo founder. So I think that 2026 is going to be the year that I expand. I'm also the CTO of another company, and we've got a handful of new sales guys that I met with at the beginning of the year that are really, they're recent grads, and they're driven, right? These guys are young and they want a taste of success, and they come and they see, my house and the stuff that I have, and they're like, I want that. And like, I'm of the C-suite, I'm actually like the low man on the totem pole compared to the success that a couple of these other guys have experienced. And they're a lot older than me, but because of that, like they've accumulated more wealth and they've got more cool shit. So these young guys are seeing this stuff and like, I want that. And it's like, it's cool to be part of that, like that they're looking up to me. But it's also like me looking to them being like, I need that drive again. These guys are young and they're primed. They're ready to go. Like they're like, hey, they want to go knock doors and start making calls. And I think that's something that I need to kind of reevaluate in my own life, is like finding that drive again.
Yeah, 100%. That drive is so important, because, you think about the mental mindset approach on what you want to achieve. Have I achieved it? Okay, check the box, on to the next thing. And it keeps happening, because the more things you check off the list, the more things you add to the list. So it becomes a never ending cycle, because that list is a to-do list and it's always active and it's always responsive. So I definitely get what you mean when it comes to that. And it's good that you're around people who are doing more success than you, but successfully, you're all within the same success bracket, because you're looking at success as what it means to you at the time you are. Because if you look at the time you are when they were, would it be the same? So when we now look at comparisons and we look at, objectives and intentions in life, it's very interesting to see how we can also see the potential we can get to, just based on how we see things from our perspective, and where we can take it to based on the efforts that we put in, because it's achievable. It's definitely achievable. I think it's just mentally where we want to place it and where we want to go, business wise, owner wise, founder wise, because people create businesses and they set up websites, they set up all these things, and then they have to manage it. For you, technically, you're able to do it because you have the know-how, the skills, and you're able to articulate it on your own. But another founder may not have the same capabilities skill-wise to do the same thing at a capacity that you could. So it's always like, how do we make it easy for everyone, but at the same time not make it hard the same way, that makes it complicated in the same process? Because I feel like everything that we do is based on how we set the motion. And if we start off with, a good website because we can do this for a couple of years and then pivot, great. If we've been building this for 5 years, 10 years, then there should be a difference between your first year and your 9th year. So it's definitely different to look at it that way, just looking at everything into one. So I love that you mentioned it, Ryan. But I know for the Google positionings, first of all, I know Google Postmaster also helps. I don't know if you're connected to that too, because when you just look at all the things happening and then you still send the emails, because you're still dealing with domain keys, identifier mail. You're still dealing with SPF, sender policy frameworks. So all these things are still pertaining to your SEO internally, technically, because your domain is still coming from a DNS server. So if they all come together and you're able to send out the emails or automate them or schedule them, then that way it's easier for you, like you said, each month to just send a newsletter or a blog or something that will keep people coming back to your site. Because when somebody receives an email today, they may not open that email maybe till a week from now, a month from now, a quarter from now. So that's just the basis that I always see it at, because when you look at people who open it and click it, and then you're able to build it since you already have the system in place, then it's just going to be a no-brainer eventually when you're able to now scale it or exit or merge. So the good thing is that you have the asset, you have the build up, so it's just to turn on. It's like kind of like a push to start in a way. So it's not really a problem, it's just when is that going to happen? That's the only question involved.
Absolutely. And this one website in particular, I've been contemplating just selling it for a while. I think that it's something that I'm already on to the next thing. I've got a couple things that I think could be bigger. Not that, this, I would like to see where it goes, but there's also, it's not something, this project that I've been very vague about, right? Like, it's not something that I'm big proud of, in the sense that, like, I wouldn't want my kids to be like, oh yeah, this is what my dad's known for. So it's like, it's lucrative, sure, but is this like actually something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Absolutely not. And I think that there's a ton of people that might look at it from a different perspective and be like, I want that chance. Like, this guy hasn't scaled this up, like, why not? And I think that that's something that, maybe I'll let them take that journey and focus on one of these other projects that are more mainstream and above board, and, something that I could get significant adoption without having any moral quandaries about it.
100%. I definitely love that. And you look at businesses and you're like, okay, I build this thing and let it go, let it fly. And then the next person can take it from there because there's a system in place. It's like you build a car and then the person can drive it. So it definitely makes sense. And it's an engine that you've successfully tested and evaluated. So hats off to you. That's amazing, Ryan. Thank you for this feedback today. And I love that you mentioned in the comments too, and also in particular to this topic today, on WordPress versus Webflow, knowing that you're also within developments as well, WordPress wise, and also it could be Webflow. When you look at the two, which one would you look more towards and why? And this is in the lens or through the lens of somebody who has no idea about what these two platforms could do.
Truthfully, I've barely played with Webflow. I had a project, I think it was probably 2 years ago, and obviously a lot has changed in 2 years, that the client was already using Webflow and they wanted me to add some functionality to their website and change some of the designs. What I really liked about Webflow was how the ease of use and the animation. These are all things that in WordPress you need to use other software. So like you need plugins like either Elementor, or you need a theme like Divi or something that has a page builder component built into it. WordPress at its core doesn't support these things, like as a standalone system. I also think that Gutenberg, for most people, which probably anyone listening to this is like, what the hell is Gutenberg? Gutenberg is a new editor interface for WordPress, and I think it's very complicated to the layperson. So I think that Framer wins in terms of simplicity and ease of use out of the box. I also think that they're kind of apples to oranges, in that WordPress is an open source content management system that you can use to build absolutely anything. It's got, it's very, very easy. It's got hooks and actions and filters and all these things that you can tap into to build your own functionalities. Say, for example, like, you are a ticket, you're an event company and you need to sell tickets. Like, you can easily add that functionality, and you want to be able to scan QR codes at the door or whatever. You can make all that functionality with WordPress very simple, as opposed to if you're using Webflow, that's not something that's like supported out of the box.
Exactly. I also believe that too. I've worked with Webflow as well as WordPress, and just using both of them independently and just seeing clients that use them too, most of the times I get to ask them, why did you choose this platform? And most times they would say, I'm just generalizing it because there could be a bunch of reasons, but the ones that I hear the most are the person who built the site recommended that option, or that's what they knew they could use at the time that they were building a website. So it could end up being in completely different, I can say, times, because someone can just switch over to Shopify just because they heard about it a week ago. But they may take a month or 3 months to make that decision before they move everything over and ask all the right questions that pertain to their business and their authority and all the online things. Because if you now switch up from one platform to the other and a record is missing, then that's going to affect the whole ethical, I can call it the workshop or the workspace of the site, entirely. And also potentially, because it could also bridge, trust with other search engines like Google and the rest of them. So it definitely makes sense. I know for Webflow specifically, because Webflow has an inbuilt way of building clean codes, they already have that in place. Like you were mentioning, with WordPress, you have to use Divi or Cornerstone, or you have to use Elementor or WP Bakery. And now you've talked about Gutenberg too. So it's like there's so many options, and someone has to first buy website hosting, and then they have to buy the domain, then they have to buy the CMS, the content management system. They have to choose which one they're going to use to connect to the domain, and then they have to choose a lot of other things too that come into play. So by the time they're making all these decisions, it has to also make sense, logically and financially, for the person who is building this and sustaining this business online. So it definitely makes a complete split difference between the two, because Webflow is great. They already have their SEO features built in. You don't have to plug things like you would with WordPress, because WordPress, you have to plug in Yoast, or you can plug in Rank Math. There's a couple others, all-in-one SEO. That's another one you can use. There are other options that are available that I've heard of. So those are the major ones people usually talk about. So if you use these tools as plugins, that's what's going to accelerate your website to now consume content for search engines. But within Webflow, you already have those things pre-installed, and that also gives you much more when it comes to faster performance. Because when you think about faster performance, you're also thinking about the CDN too. Knowing that Webflow also, you talked about Amazon, actually, Ryan, too, with AWS. And you also see where you're creating content with platforms that also are connected to those third-party applications. Like I know for me, I use Flowdesk, and they're great because I'm a Flowdesk partner, and they're great too because Flowdesk have partnered with Amazon SES, which is simple email service. So I know within the back end of the deliverability and also within the CDN, I know that is fast. I know that that's why I'm getting close to 99.9% deliverability rates, with emails that are going out in the tens of thousands. So when you start looking at it from how you're getting deliveries and how it's also translating into your SEO, into your content building, into all those things, whether it's a WordPress site or a Wix site or a Webflow site or a Shopify site or a Squarespace site or a Tilda site or a Duda site. And now there are others that you can also hear about. All these platforms are great, but at the end of the day, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Siri, they're not looking for a Shopify site to rank. They're not looking for a WordPress site to rank or a Webflow site to rank. They're looking for the author of a web page that has the most relevant context that's going to help their client, because Google's client is the searcher, the customer that is searching on their search engine. So Google wants to provide the best result to the best user at the best time possible, based on the most recent and the most updated information available. So if there are millions of pages and Google picks this one over the others, there's a reason why that page is being picked, because not just that page alone has its dominance, also surrounding it, there are things that are also helping it gain that visibility or credibility. It could be a podcast show. It could be a book on Amazon. It could be a YouTube video or a YouTube channel that you have. It could be something outside of your website that is still socially credible, for you to still gain that dominance. So don't look at a website and think it's just because you have a WordPress website and it's not working. That's the problem is SEO. The problem is the structure of the website within itself. Have you connected some things in there? Are your pages loading? If you have plugins that are so much and so heavy, that can slow down your website on WordPress compared to Webflow, where you don't have to install plugins. But when you now think about price and you think about the ecosystem and scaling and also management, are you going to manage it yourself, or are you going to hire a team to manage it? So those are the questions that people usually ask. And if you're thinking about either or, your goal is to think about what is going to be the best for me, right? And
also, I think that one of the things that you just mentioned is actually probably the most important is the scalability, and that's, I think, where something like Webflow, Framer, whatever platform, they handle all the infrastructure needs. Same thing with Shopify. So you don't have to worry about your VPS. How much RAM do I have right now? How many PHP workers do I have? You don't need to worry about any of that stuff because it's all handled for you by the platform. And that's part of, I think that, within WordPress as an example, at a certain scale, a certain point, you have to bring in outside help if you don't know what you're doing. The average layperson is not in DevOps and does not understand, infrastructure requirements. And I think that these big companies have teams of engineers that work around the clock specifically to keep things going. And you're not going to get that with regular WordPress sites.
That's a fact. WordPress SEO, WordPress plugins, WordPress development, WordPress maintenance, those are high keywords. Those are high search terms because people have these websites and they don't know what to do with them. They could be broken. Your website could be saying 2022 copyright and we're in 2026. So you don't know how to change that because you were never told, or when you were being offboarded by the person who built the site, they probably didn't tell you the things to do, or there was no training session, or there was no tutorial or consultation. Those are very specific things that not everyone can do because not every business is the same. So you can't really put it to them, but at the end of the day, you got to know where the best questions are answered and where you can also scale up to a point where it feels comfortable for you to even decide to make a big decision executively if you want to create more content for the builder or for yourself. Because when you look at websites, and you can research this, do your studies as you're listening to this, there are 1.1 billion websites in the world. And out of those 1.1 billion websites in the world, 43% of those websites are on WordPress. Talk about hospitals, sports, anything, just name it. It could be government, it could be your business corporate website, it could be a personal website, it could be a celebrity website, it could be a shopping website, it could be an e-commerce website, because there's WooCommerce too, right? WooCommerce is for e-commerce on WordPress. So these are all the different things you have to think about too. So if 43% of websites are on WordPress, how do you maintain those things? How do you build security around them? How do you build those things that if your WordPress site is open, some people, I've worked with some clients where they have to even block some geolocations just so that they don't have, because they're not selling to those companies or selling to those countries. So they have to make sure they can block that out. They have to do that manually, which is a very technical way of setting it up compared to Shopify, where it's just a click away. You say, okay, which countries do you want to choose from? So there are so many things you have to think about as a business and say, am I ready for all this? And if I am, what are the things in place? Because you might want to pivot and turn your website into an e-commerce site, but it's only built for portfolio basis. And that's WordPress when you're building it from scratch. So there are so many things to look at for when you start thinking about where you want to create it and how do you want to start spreading it out too. And then also, Webflow doesn't have a lot of demand, quote unquote, when you hear it, or even Framer or even Figma. You hear about these, whether it's for apps or for websites, you're building these platforms for the potential to now start creating all these web flows, quote unquote. I can call that a double entendre, because you're looking at how your website, your web page, your web links are all flowing within different search engines, whether it's an AI search engine, a Google bot, or a Perplexity bot, or a Bing bot. Those bots are reading those codes from coming from your website. So they're not trying to certify your website because on Shopify, like I know like Fashion Nova, they're on Shopify. That's a big site as well. So when you start looking at platforms, websites, and there are many out there, you can always check them out and see because it's public to you. That's not going to make or break anything. What's going to make or break your site is how you've created the site structure from the ground up, just like a house, just like a building, just like a skyscraper. So that technical setup of your website is so important. So WordPress gives you all those things. And let's say you've not updated your plugins in 2 years and there have been 16 new versions prior to yours. How are you going to go back to those 16 versions or update it to the latest version of your WordPress site if you didn't know that? So these are things to do. That's why there's people pay for website maintenance, website implementation, because you should be worrying about the admin stuff, the people, the customer experience, the value exchange, the contacts, the people you're connecting with, and leave those technical things that you may not be aware of to somebody who can do it. But if you don't know who can do it, that's where you now ask these questions and you now go online and you look at podcast shows, you look at books, you look at YouTube videos, you look at services near you based on your location. You're able to now decide and see where it works best for you, because marketing, it's something I've heard, and I love to hear your thoughts on this, Ryan, because when people hear marketing, especially marketing businesses or services or even SEO services, people say that they are needed, which is they're very much needed, but the way it's been painted, because some people have tainted it, it's just changed the way people think about marketing and SEO.
I think that, and this is something that I can speak to because I've worked for agencies in the past that are selling snake oil. I think that it's one of SEO in particular leaves most people. I would actually say that most people are probably left with a sour taste in their mouth after dealing with a standard SEO agency, because in an industry that should be completely transparent via analytics and tools like SEMrush and Majestic, Ahrefs, whatever, what we end up seeing is the layperson doesn't know about this stuff, and the ones that do know about this know enough to get their hands dirty themselves, and they wouldn't trust an agency to handle SEO for them. I have so many experiences with people that I operate exclusively by word of mouth. I've been a consultant now for 13, almost 14 years, coming up in May. And I do not think that a lot of people, how am I even going to phrase this? I think that a lot of people trust an agency to get, you don't know what you don't know. So you try and hire someone who does know. So as an example, like you would say, I don't know how to change my alternator in my car, so I'm going to go to a mechanic, and you trust that the mechanic knows what they're doing. Well, in marketing and search engine optimization, you're making that assumption, but there's really, anyone can set up a shop, so there's really no way to tell whether or not that person actually knows what they're doing. And what I've seen a lot of times is someone will say, "Oh, we're going to do SEO for you," and what they end up doing is they'll give them some generic report. They'll maybe hook up Google Search Console, and pull some numbers from that, and then they'll buy shitty backlinks. Right? They'll go and they'll go on Fiverr, or they'll go on whatever website, and they're going to buy some backlinks, and they're going to say, "Look, we did SEO for you, right? We're going to check that box, and then we're going to charge you $1,200 a month." And you're not going to get any value out of it, and you're really not going to move the needle. And they're going to show, I've seen this too. A lot of times they'll say, "Look, this is the keyword report," and they'll show you this big list of keywords of everything that you're quote unquote ranking for, but you're ranked, I know none of them are in the top 10. Like most of them are here. Like here's, you're ranking for this term, and it's like, but if you look closely, they're actually, number 67. It's like, well, you're not getting any traffic from this. So I even include this in this quote unquote keyword report. And I see that type of stuff all the time. I've seen, as an example, I saw a pay-per-click campaign that got set up for a solar company in Sacramento. I'm not going to say which one, but they're a large solar company, one of the largest. in that region, and they had hired a guy to do, their Google ads, and the guy didn't put any negative keywords. So when someone was typing, solar phone charger, they're paying, it was completely not anything that they sell or offer. They're paying for these clicks, right? There's solar pool floaties, solar, like any solar anything. They were ranking for stuff that was not PV solar for residential roofs, which is what they sell. They were ranking for all, getting all these clicks for stuff that had nothing to do with it. They also do solar pool heating. So all these pool heating keywords were coming up, or not pool heating rather, but just like pool in general keywords, right? Or if someone was typing in, Yahoo pool, right? Like literally the word like billiards pool, and they were wasting all this money on these clicks to the tune of like $3,000 a month. And I mean, it was just like, holy crap, like that's insane that you guys have spent. And no one knew, that this was the case, because the people that hired this guy assumed that he knew what he was doing, and they had no way of checking themselves because they don't know. That's why they outsourced it to someone who they would say, hey, we're going to go to a professional for this. So just in the same way that you would assume that a mechanic shop is, they're going to know how to change your alternator and you're not going to second guess, did you do this right? So they just assumed, all right, we've got, our alternator installed and we're good to go. But really it was something that was done completely, very, very, very poorly, like almost maliciously poorly. And it was costing them thousands of dollars a month for probably almost a full year. So, I mean, it's just, and I see that kind of stuff all the time. As another example, I have a friend who's a harbor master at a marina, and they went and they met this marketing agency that works specifically in marina marketing, like their vertical. And they met him at a trade show, and they signed up, and they were paying $800 a month for social media management and $1,200 a month for SEO. And my buddy knows that this is what I do, and I don't really mix business and friendship. So I've never worked with him, and he calls me and he's like, hey, like, do you think you could take a look at our stuff and see if we're getting a good value out of this? Like, I don't know how to tell whether or not these guys are doing a good job. I was like, all right, sure. Yeah, send me access to Google Analytics. And he's like, how do I do that? It's like, just ask your, account rep to add my email, or even add your email, and I'll just come over and we'll go over it together. Well, it turns out this company that was doing SEO for them didn't have any analytics software on the website at all. It was a WordPress site. There was no Google Analytics. There was no Get Clicky. There was literally nothing, zero analytics. So I was like, clearly these guys aren't doing a good job if they don't even have analytics on your site. How are they possibly going to know what, any sort of performance metrics? And they didn't even have Google Search Console set up. I mean, we're talking about, they literally did nothing for them. And for a full year, they had them under contract, charging them $1,200 a month for a service that they never rendered, right? And they were saying like, oh, we're quoting, I was like, let me see the contract. And the contract was, their job was literally just maintaining SEO. What does that mean? What does maintaining SEO mean? They're doing literally nothing. So I threw their website into Majestic to look at their backlink and do a backlink analysis. They hadn't built any links. They hadn't added blog posts. They hadn't, found partnerships or linked to their site from other sites or anything. It was literally, they had done nothing except for cash a check for a full year. So going back to your, taking a full circle back to your original question is, I think that a lot of people are going to have a lot of trust problems because of experiences like this. And it's very important to find a really solid agency, but it's super hard because the average business owner, you don't know what you don't know, and you just expect /hope /pray that the person that you're going to go hire does. And you're hoping that they're not just bullshitting you and that they're not just good at sales, that they're actually good at SEO or marketing. And with that, I land my plane.
Man, that plane is loaded. It's loaded because there's so much you've unpacked in a short time that is just a little speck of what is actually happening out there that people may not know of. These are like horror stories that I hear, and people spend money, thousands of dollars, and they're reporting these things, and you're like, what is this? What does this mean? And the thing about it is, when someone doesn't understand what it means and it's not clear to them, then even the report you're sharing is not making any sense thereof. They're not going to be interested or even have any interest in what you're saying, because they don't see the value, even though there is a value, but they can't qualify the value. Then that's where there's a red line, or a blurry line in between, because you don't want to have those type of measures taken and your website is growing because you're buying backlinks and you're building it out. It's worse. It's definitely like in a point where you have to think about it yourself as a business and say, what are we really doing SEO for? Is this a money grab scheme, or are we actually helping people? Because people need help, and people actually want to show up for things that they do of service to people, because you're helping someone be of service to somebody else. So if you don't do your due diligence and now they can't do theirs because you didn't do yours, now it's just a whole cluster, fill in the blank. And you have to look at it in a long-term way that has to give you a short-term analysis and ask yourself, okay, what are we doing with this next 3 months, 6 months? How are we building these things out? Because you can have all these backlinks, and these could be the reason why you're actually being hurt online, because they are toxic backlinks and they are non-toxic backlinks. So how are you going to know which is toxic and which is not toxic? So there's so much that you can unpack, that if you just don't know what's going on and someone is just paying for these services yearly, monthly, whether it's ads or SEO organically, it's going to be hard to really scale back and say, okay, what are we really looking for? And you talked about even the negative keywords, which is so important. Even on Pinterest, people don't do that on Pinterest. You don't add those things, and you just wonder, why are we not, what's the difference between a positive and a negative keyword? What's the difference between a broad match and an exact match and a phrase match? So when people don't know these terms, or even can explain them in a way that layman can understand, or even a 5-year-old can understand, then it's going to be hard to even do business with the person, because you can't report what you don't know. If you don't understand it, then how will you analyze it? So it's very important to look at these things. And website wise, picking the right website is very important. Shopify, whether it's Squarespace, Wix, WordPress, Webflow, these are websites that can scale, but you need to know how they can scale if you're putting the right things in place. So it just makes a lot of sense. But I really appreciate you for bringing that, Ryan, and just letting more people know too that, hey, there's value in what you're getting, but the value needs to be justified based on what you've seen before and what you can also see next. So it's very important to look at these two factors, and even analytics wise, because analytics is great. Just because you have analytics on your Shopify or your Wix or your Squarespace or your site kit within WordPress is good, right? But that's just a little speck of what is happening out there. Are you tracking AI mentions? Are you tracking Perplexity, Google search? Now there's going to be something called Google Disco coming very soon, right? I've talked about this before. We already have Perplexity Comet and ChatGPT Atlas. How do you build these things? Flowdesk, I got to know that Flowdesk has a huge opportunity for backlinks, which actually surprised me, because as a Flowdesk partner, I was like, hey, you guys, this tech thing you guys did is genius, because the only reason why I signed up with Flowdesk was not even about the price, because back in the day it was $19 a month, unlimited. Now, of course, they've switched it up and things have changed. Times have changed from 2019, 2020. Now, they still have the same infrastructure in place, which is great, because you can send massive emails, you can create a lot of integrations and build out all those things. Why am I saying this with Flowdesk now is because with Flowdesk, I did a report and I noticed that when you create checkouts on Flowdesk, this is a tactic that if you try this, guys, and it works for you, please tell me. And if you want us to work it out together, let's do it. Flowdesk, when you create checkouts on Flowdesk, those checkouts turn into transactional links. Literally transactional links, and it's actually the name of your domain /checkout, which will be at the end of the slug. And when you have that checkout and it's active, because your checkout could be inactive, when your checkout is active, that's going to send a report, because Flowdesk is technically Amazon, because Amazon SES, simple email service, is providing Flowdesk with the ability to create all this amazing, flows that we have within Flowdesk. So because you have a secure domain, you have a secure site, you have a secure business, you have a secure DNS, domain name system or domain name server, now you can build this into the system that you can actually attribute to that checkout. And if in that checkout you have backlinks, or rather you place, of course, hypertext, and then you put your link and you link it back canonically to your domain, that's a great gain, because now you can push more content, more checkouts, and you're creating articles. That's like an infinite loop that you've just created right there. So there's so much you can do, but you just have to see those little meticulous things that when you find them like little gems, you're like, okay, this is precious. I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna make sure that this is working, because it does work. It just depends on how you're able to put it out there for people. So it's very important to factor those things in. I see you, Carlos. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being here, Larry. Nikki, good to see you as well. And Margot, thank you for being here. And Maya, I hope I said it correctly. Thanks for being here too. Appreciate you for being here. Yes, this is WordPress versus Webflow. If you have another website that's not these two, I will be here tomorrow talking about Shopify versus Squarespace. So it's going to be another whole thing going on over here. So I'm excited to talk about it and show you the difference between them, because it doesn't really matter which website you use. What matters is what has been technically put together. We can use the same bricks, we can use the same sand, we can use the same cement, we can use the same flour, we can use the same butter, we can use the same sugar, salt, whatever you want to put in it, but it's going to taste different because of how you paid attention to the details. And those details are the fundamentals that we drive consistently for you for traffic. If you're able to build it out, it's so important to put it out there as well. Margot says, I'm so glad to finally find a professional conversation here. Thank you, Margot. I appreciate it. The hallway on Clubhouse is different. Speaking of the hallway, there's a town hall today on Clubhouse. So I don't know what's going to be happening, but please feel free to check it out. It's at 7 p.m. Central. That should be 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. I just know that because I have that scheduled to be there today to just know what's going on Clubhouse, because it's good to know where you spend time at. You need to pay attention to the things you pay attention to, whether it's your time, your money, your energy. It's just important. It just makes sense. So thank you for being here and also spending time with us today. And Meredith, thank you for being here too, as well. Analytics wise is so important, for your business. When you think about website development, right? When somebody builds your website, what are the things that you're getting with a built website? Because one person can say, hey, I'm going to go to Fiverr and I'm going to get someone to build my website. Okay. Someone can say, okay, I'm going to go to an AI tool and build a website for myself, and I don't have to worry about overhead costs or expenses or anything like that. Service fees, I'm good. Cool. Now you've done that, but you've not really developed a website. It's like saying, okay, let me just build this window here. Let me just build this house on the rocks, and then we can see what happens if something happens. It's not a good thing to plan for you. The way to fail is to not plan at all. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And when you build systems, think about your analytics, because this is going to help you even know how much to spend time online. The reason why website development is so important, if I've never said this anywhere at all, and I'm saying this for the first time, please hear this. The only reason why website development is so important, and there are many other reasons, but this is one of the major reasons. The fundamental reason why your website is important is because when you show up on social media, it's what you show up on your website that validates your social credibility. So if you have a website and your website has articles, referrals, features, videos, tables, whatever it is that you want to put out there, FAQs, glossaries, tools, kits, things that people can find, case studies, reviews, testimonials, things that people can validate, and you're using that on your website and they're being recognized and being indexed on search engines, not just showing up on your website as a canvas, but it's actually an active page that is receiving incoming traffic, because there are two types of visitors on your website. There are new visitors and returning visitors. So you have to look at that too, and also see what's the variance between those two. Am I getting more visitors every month that is new? Am I getting 2% increase of new visitors, or am I getting 50% of returning visitors? Either way it goes, It's like your YouTube. Are you getting more subscribers or non-subscribers watching my video? If I have 100 views, did I get 100 subscribers or one subscriber? So when you start looking at YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, all these other platforms that we use for social media, they're great. But if somebody Googles your name or Googles your business or Googles your product, what are they going to see? Your website? Yes? No? That's going to be conditional based on how you set up your technical flow. Then if they see your social media and they don't see your website, that could be a problem too, because now there's no linking website that is validated by Google, yet you have a social media account, which you don't own, which is still available for people to see, which is great. But just imagine if you were running your business on all your social media platforms and the only missing element was your website. You're going to see a complete drastic change in your conversions. Even if you run ads on your website, you're going to have a problem, because if you run ads on Meta, let's say Google or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, LinkedIn, or any of these platforms, you're going to run ads on these platforms. But if you're sending traffic to the websites, then those web links that you're sending them to are going back to your domain. So if your domain doesn't have structure, if it doesn't have stamina, if it doesn't have semantics, if it doesn't have all the things that need to be placed in, it's going to be hard to scale that if you don't have the right things that are going to attribute to that success. Because think about this, right? When Valentine's season, before you know it, it's going to be Easter. Before you know it, it's going to be Thanksgiving, and then it's Christmas again. So in each of the seasons that you're in, when you have a website and a developed website, the question is, do I have all the right contents in place? Do I have a kitchen? Do I have a living room? Do I have a garage? Do I have a backyard? Do I have a kitchen? Do I have a closet? These are the things that are attributing to your website. Just like your homepage, your about page, your product page, your contact page, your policy page. These are pages that are, if they're not there, it's going to hurt your social media, like platforms like Pinterest. If you don't have a good policy page or policy pages, terms and condition pages, return policy pages, shipping pages that allow you to have an e-commerce site, and this goes for any other website too, it's going to be hard for you to submit your website, because they're going to tell you, hey, you need to fix your website policy because we can't scan that and it's not readable, so it's not compliant. So when it's now non-compliant, how are you going to validate something that has not been authenticated? So it just goes back to say your website is so important. And sometimes this is a hard truth, but it's also important to look at it this way. So when people are not looking at websites, you're not just thinking, okay, am I going to build a WordPress website? Am I going to build a Webflow website? You can build whatever website you want. You can build wherever you want, however you want. It's all in your creation. It's all to do. But the next question that should come after this is, if I have a website and I want to build my website for long-term visibility, how can I use my website as a way to develop relationships with people? And those relationships are going to come through pages that people are going to find through the traffic sources that they come from. So whether it's Google, ChatGPT, LinkedIn, Pinterest, the list is endless. You can still create content that will come back to your website. So when I talked about Flowdesk, the checkouts, the links, the emails, all these things are very important to do, because once you start creating more content for your business, the more people can start to find you more credible, more resourceful, more accessible, because nobody wants to work with you if you're not friendly, if you're not accessible, if you're not trustworthy. It's just going to be a bridge, and people they have bigger fish to fry. The last thing they want to do is worry about something that they could avoid. So it's just to be better in the know-how or how to take these questions more intentionally. And if you're deciding to now work with a company that's working on a website, ask them, what websites have you built before? What CMS tools have you used before? Or what platforms have you built websites on? Because some people are on Fiverr, Upwork, or all these platforms that are looking for hire for work. And they could even be companies or agencies offering services that are very specific. They might say, okay, we only do Framer, or we only do Figma, or we only do WordPress websites. And even within WordPress, we only build with Elementor. We only build with Divi. So people may say all those kind of things. So you don't know what you don't know until you show up and you're like, oh, okay, guess, I thought not really. So it has to be very specific on how you can build that long term and see how your business can now get into a much better space as a business owner. So if you have a WordPress website, please get someone to manage it. And if they don't know what they're doing, ask them the right questions, find out an alternative, go online, do your research, and see how best you can articulate your business. Because if nothing is working, then one of the major things to fix is to look at your website framework. Because if you don't have content that is updated, it's going to be hard for you to be related, if that even makes sense in its context, because people are looking for related searches, related keywords, related content, related information, related suggestions. So if you're not in that related section or related attributions, it's going to be hard for you to be picked out of the three, because normally people I'll say they choose them as threes. So right now there's a fourth quadrant. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is number 1 to 3 when it comes to rankings. 1, 2, 3, that's the first ranking. That's the first quadrant. The second one is from 4 to 10. The third quadrant is from 11 to 50. And the fourth quadrant is from 51 to 100. So if your business is not ranking and going up from 100 to 1, then especially on a monthly basis, based on activities that are going on the back end, there has to be that credibility and there has to be that justifiable way of showing that, okay, we've created content for this reason and we're getting more traffic back for this reason. So that's something that you can use to have as an attribute to know exactly how best it can outplay into your long-term theory or even your practical ways of even doing your business long-term. So WordPress, Webflow, it's up to you. It's your choice, but if you want to deal with less plugins, go to Webflow because of the aesthetics. You want to deal with less of those technical setups, definitely Webflow, but also you're going to have to consider pricing too. So that's something to also leverage and think about and also consider. WordPress, it's also equally as expensive based on how you customize the build and also what plugins you have, because plugins are either going to be free or paid. So there's a lot of things to consider. It's not just the development itself, it's the structure after it. Do you have analytics? You can use Fathom Analytics or Google Analytics GA4. That's another option you can use. So there are many options you can pick from. Set it up, have heat maps on your website if you need that, using Microsoft Clarity. You can use Bing Webmaster Tools to connect it to Google by importing it from your search console. These are very specific things you can do. But once you've had all those things set up, it's different completely, because now when you have website development done, there's still SEO involved. So most times people stop at the website development and say, hey, here's your website. And then the next thing you're looking for is SEO or traffic or leads, because it's not been completed as a website developer would have if they had a knowledge of SEO as well. Ryan, what are your thoughts on people that have website development expertise but no SEO expertise, and then people who have website and SEO expertise for both the reasons?
I think that these days, it's hard to say I'm biased because I feel like these days I would expect a web developer to have these skills. So just, to clarify, I've seen a lot of people using heading tags for styling purposes, right? Where they're using an H1 tag to make a big, bold font, right? As opposed to using it for structuring their page for search engine, markup purposes. And I think that's a pretty common thing that I see, but that's usually not from like a developer perspective. It's usually from someone who is kind of like a tinkerer. A lot of times, like agencies will hire people who they're good at aesthetics. Like a lot of designers and stuff like that who are like, all right, I'm primarily a designer, but I want to build a website, and they'll use heading tags for styling instead of actually doing it for structured markup on the website for search purposes. So that's one thing that I see pretty often. The other thing that I see a lot is no schema markup. I think that's kind of an afterthought. Even stuff like a sitemap. I think a lot of times people will literally install, like on a WordPress site in particular, they'll install something like all-in-one SEO or Yoast or whatever, and they'll call it done. They won't even actually go through and configure anything. They'll just be like, okay, I installed an SEO plugin, checkbox. That means that now there's going to be a sitemap.xml file and a robots.txt, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's my take on it.
Thank you, Ryan. It's so important to look at these things and ask them these questions. Are they set up? Because someone say, yeah, I've heard this before. You just reminded me, someone said this before. Oh yeah, someone did my Yoast. And I was like, what does that mean? And that's when I even ended up creating an episode one day. This was, I think, 2-3 years ago, about toast versus Yoast, or Yoast versus toast, because you just don't know what you don't know. And you could be toast just because you didn't understand how things went, and it's now burnt toast at that point. So you have to look at it from a long-term perspective and see where your content is going, who is actually developing your website. And if somebody's going to develop your website, please ask the person, do they have any knowledge of SEO? Because that's usually the question I get to ask them. As a client, I'm like, did they build your website with SEO applied, or did they just build it based on aesthetics and functionality? Those are two different things. And if they can do both, those are two peas in a pod. That's a perfect blend. So it just depends on how you've set it up and what you need to do. But you have to also ask these right questions to know exactly what the answers would be. And if the answers are what you want to hear, then they also have to see that by evidence of representation. So it's very important to look at that. So I believe today we've covered WordPress versus Webflow. WordPress is a great CMS tool, content management system tool. Same thing with Webflow. It's just that they operate in different ways. And if you have a business, your goal is to now ask yourself as a business, what am I going to use WordPress for? What am I going to use Webflow for? So if you're thinking about what to choose between these two, if you're looking at Webflow, let's start with WordPress. If you're looking at WordPress and you need functionality customization when it comes to extensive integrations outside of what Webflow gives you, because WordPress is open source. That's something that you also have to think about. It's called open source code. So you can install different things into your WordPress because it's custom built. That's why some websites you look at, they look very high functionality or high performance or high technical because they have so many moving parts that if one button is missing, it could mess up a whole pipeline or a much better of a funnel rather than just a sign up. So if you're looking at everything within Webflow or WordPress, I would say it's just based on your choice of preference, your preference based on what you like, what you want to maintain, what you want to sustain, and what you want to scale. So if you're choosing WordPress, think about functionality, think about extensive integrations into your system, think about a large content base, because when you now think about where you're hosting, it's not just WordPress. You also have to host it on a server. A server could be Bluehost. It could be GoDaddy, right? I always tell people, if you want to use a good one, I always recommend Hostinger or Hostinger, however you call it, tomato. It's up to you, but it's host, INGER, Hostinger. And that's a great platform that you can use too if you want to host your website. Because when you have a website and your website has something called bandwidth, that's where you're going to start winning. Because bandwidth is going to be what separates you from another person that has a website on WordPress. Because if you have, let's say, 5,000 gigabytes and the next person has 50 gigabytes, that's going to play a big role into how things are being rendered, right? So these are very important things to factor in as a business so that you're not just choosing it because of anything that's specific on that. But if you're using WordPress, then specifically think about your content base, and then also think about SEO tools, because SEO tools are going to be very important for WordPress. Super important. As you've heard, Ryan talked about it with sitemaps. When you now have your sitemap, it has to be installed. You can't have two sitemaps working together. It's like saying you have two brains. You only have one. So a sitemap, I always say, is the brain of a website. You can't have two. It has to be one. And when it's one, it has to function well. It has to be fed well. It has to be updated frequently. It has to be published consistently. These are things that either you're going to have to do or you have to hire an SEO agency to do. So if you need that type of service, please feel free to reach out to me, connect with me, click the link above and book a call, and we can talk about that at your earliest convenience, because these are things that you need to do if you need them done for your business. If somebody is working with you, validate that, create a report. don't just let it be generic. It has to be specific to the model and the objective and the KPI that you've set ahead of time. So when you're able to achieve that and you're happy, if the client is happy, you're happy, the consumer is happy, everyone's happy, then it's a happy dance. But if one person is not happy, it's not going to be a happy dance at all. So think about everybody in the room and don't let there be an elephant in the room in the same context. So look at it from that perspective and choose SEO for WordPress in a much concise way if you know somebody that actually does SEO as a development company or as an agency that does SEO specifically. But if you want to use Webflow, that's great. If you care about design, performance, if you care about having a unified platform, thinking about less plugins to worry about, then Webflow is your go-to, and you won't have to worry about SEO. Even though you still need to do it, it won't be as extensive as it would be on WordPress. Not that you're not gonna have to do it. It's just that the setup and the structure of both are set up in a way that you have to have a specialist. Just like there's a specialist for a specific type of car, a Benz, a Mercedes-Benz, different from a BMW, different from a Tesla. There's going to be different ways of attributing to that same fundamental workflow. So just think about it long term as a business and ask yourself, what am I really here to do? Am I going to keep spending money on plugins, or am I going to keep extending my business? If I am, then what can I use to maintain that? And WordPress is where you go. I've talked about it before. 43% of websites that are being used out of 1.1 billion websites are on WordPress. That's 477.3 million websites, including yours, if it's on WordPress. So if you're not on WordPress, you're going to be on all these other platforms, which is still fine. So it also tells you that there's more websites in the world that are not on WordPress than websites that are on WordPress. So don't look at WordPress and say it's WordPress or nothing. Ask yourself these very important questions, and that way you're able to have a much better understanding of what you actually need so that you can invest your time, money, and energy in the right places. Ryan, if you ask someone or tell someone what they should consider or think about through their process of thinking or making actions or decisions, what would you tell them?
Not gonna lie, Favour, dude. I was reading something and completely tuned you out. My apologies.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was just asking, what would you tell someone that is looking to choose between these platforms and trying to consider their time, money, and energy, just basically from a business standpoint?
Objectives. I'd say choose the platform that most closely aligns with your business objectives. And I know that's open to interpretation, but I think that you could probably narrow it down to say, like, do you need XYZ? What custom functionalities do you need, right? If you have a static website, which a lot of small businesses do, maybe it's something that they change every once in a while. But I think that if you're going static, that's going to be the way to go. Versus if you need functionality that can only be offered by a platform like WordPress that supports, you executing PHP on the server, then you're going to need something like WordPress.
Thank you, Ryan. It's so important to look at these two options. And for me, I would say WordPress wins because you can do more with less. But if you want to do less and still gain a little bit more of your time back and other things, great, you can use Webflow. But just know that there's going to be a lot of technicalities that you have to understand or pay for. So just make sure, like you said, Ryan, have your objectives in place and make sure that you're not overspending or overstepping your boundaries too. So this has been great. I'll talk about Shopify versus Squarespace tomorrow. So I look forward to being with you all and, talking about this more extensively. So thank you, Ryan, for the questions, for the insights. This was big. I appreciate you for that. Carlos, thanks for being here. Maya, thanks for being here, and as well as Beta, thank you for being here too. I hope you have a wonderful, blessed day. If you guys love tacos, happy Taco Tuesday. If you don't, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Stay warm, stay hydrated, stay blessed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the same marketing club. Also, thank you for listening to the show.
Later,
Ryan. If you have reached this point of the episode, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the We Don't Play podcast show. I hope this has helped you, given you some insight, because every time I come on here or anytime I bring somebody on here, a guest, a speaker, anyone, that is of relevance to you listening is always going to give you educational value, definitely entertainment value, and most importantly, empowerment value. So thank you for listening to the We Don't Play podcast show every day. And if you want to reach out to me, you know where to find me. Click the links in the description or go to info@playinc.online, info@playinc.online, and book a call. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk SEO. Let's talk marketing. Let's talk business. Let's talk scaling. And I look forward to meeting you and learning more about you and your business. Till we meet in the next episode, have a blessed evening. Have a blessed day, night, wherever you are in the world. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now. And don't forget, Jesus loves you.